The other day, I found on the floor of the sanctuary, just really well-packed, one of these treats. Someone stepped on them, but it did not escape the wrapping. But it was well-pressed, like my French toast when I don't pay attention and also speak on the phone while I'm trying to make it. So we need you to eat them. You can unwrap them. They all make a little bit of noise, and we know that there is a sweetness. And Harry, kol hakavod, and tremendous effort and year of preparation and study. So I have a few words to share with you. This is, I mean, every Torah portion is beautiful in its own way, but especially this one. And here I feel it was really written with you in mind. It has, it's bracketed, it's an opening. It opens with these malachim, these angels that are messengers, also translation from Hebrew, except we know they are from, they come from the Holy One, who, when they walk up and down the ladder, very, very famous just image, and certainly portrayed by both Renaissance as well as 19th century etchings for this is a really lovely sight. And it will end on a bracketed on another side as the Torah portion wraps up, that our forefather Jacob, accompanied by angels, will be approaching these messengers show up, and he will be approaching his brother Esau. And if you remember, their last meeting did not go very well. Jacob takes Esau's blessing. Even so, he's probably much better father of our nation in terms of building up and his ability to think, strategize. He's certainly not a man of perfection, nor text and Torah whitewashes who he is. And like all of us, we are a mixture of many wonderful things and maybe some things that are not so wonderful. And that is our life's work, is to bring to the surface the best of ourselves. So I would like to speak to you about humility. Just right there is Jacob, between the opening verses, he's the young man running, and then he works for Lavan, he loves his wives. There are also complications, and there are not only one wife, there are 2 wives, 3 wives, 4 wives, but that does give us tribes of Israel. And but things do not go very smooth, to say the least. And when one of his beloved wives, Rachel, for his whole life, he will mourn her his whole life after her untimely death. When she says to him she can't conceive, she says, "Give me children or I'm going to die." He says to her, "Chatachat Elohim anochi, am I instead of God? I can't do that. This is not, I cannot do that." So even the man here, this individual of creative juice and forces, will have to stand back and say, there's things I cannot fulfill. And one of my favorite rabbis and teachers, Sidney Greenberg, who I access actually from his writings, and writes lovely in his words. One of his long-suffering members once came to him complaining about her husband, and she confided to a good friend that my husband has changed his faith, that he no longer believes he's God. And he responds, so often we strike a pose of absolute ineffability, handing down pronouncements and opinions as though they were carved at Sinai in stone together with the original tablets. We pretend to know that all there is to know about everything, while we suppress the haunting suspicion that inside we're very scared little people. But very often it is that hard interior of godly-like presence is actually often a cover-up for the small part of us that might not have been attended to in a childhood, or we were born with that, that fragility and need to nurture it throughout our lives, and this is kind of our defense. And he describes that one successful business person he met put in the office in the bold letters above his desk, "I might be wrong." And Rabbi Sidney writes that he thinks that it was actually what contributed to his great success, and that his ability to hear and stand in a place of tzimtzum, of this humility to say, there's things I don't know. Maybe you can tell me. I might not be able to do more than that, but please tell me and I can learn and go forward. And what should I say? As you become adult, what should I say? We are not 100% anything. We're not 100% parents. We're not 100% the best friends. We're not 100% the best children all the time. We're not 100% the best rabbis all the time, attorneys, doctors, professionals, plumbers. We have lousy days, and at times we speak from a place of smallness. The question is where are we going to go and how we can nurture that part of us that can expand into goodness. So Talmud is very elegant, and it's almost like a mantra. Let me just read it. When you humble yourself, God exalts you. When you pursue greatness, greatness flies away. When you fly from greatness, greatness seeks you out. When you force the moment, I love this, the moment drives you back. We all know that, right? When you give way, the moment is yours. The moment becomes yours. When you let go, there's a room for moment to come in. So, Hasidic master, Simcha Bunam, comments on this line, honor flees the one who pursues it, and pursues the one who flees it. This is from Talmud. So he says, we know from the Talmud this quote, and a man said to Simcha Bunam, and I love Hasidic masters because they say it like it is, and this sechel of our in a Jewish tradition, that this man came to him and said, said to Simcha Bunam that honor runs after the one who flees honor. Well, I have always run away from honors, yet none have come after me. Which Simcha Bunam responds, stop looking over your shoulder. Right? It's lovely to take with us, right? Stop looking over your shoulder. So, but we have to be careful, right? Humility is very important, except when it is so exaggerated that actually begins to damage you. And number one, it's not authentic. Nobody is ever that humble. If anything, we have to pull ourselves back. But that's not, the case is that too much humility is also not good. Why is it not good? Because it's going to eat at your self-esteem. And if you don't think that the world was created also for you, no one will believe that either. Somewhere inside of us, hidden that gem that says, there will never be another person like you. It took generations. Here, in order for you to come up here and stand up, it took generations. It would be Yehuda Mihai, who says about being in Jerusalem, generations have donated me here bit by bit so I can be standing here in Jerusalem. And so are you right here on the bima, is that there is something very authentic about each one of us that can never be repeated, ever, and has never been made before. Years and thousands of years of people coming together and going, creating you. And the fact that when that voice comes in and says, you don't deserve it and you're not worthy, it's actually Abraham Tversky, Dr. Tversky, Rabbi Tversky. I never met him, but I appreciate his writings. I read from atheist to ultra-Orthodox. I want to know what the world thinks. I read, at times, wonderful ideas from imams and sometimes from passionate Baptist ministers. Nothing. I love Tolstoy and I love Henry James. Nothing is foreign if it says something of a kernel of truth. And not only is it a kernel of truth, it's more than that. So Abraham Tversky writes, he established a number of centers to deal with addiction, with both drug and alcohol addiction throughout in North America and Israel. And he says, when you have these feelings that you're like nobody and so forth, be careful of two things. One is, it is that evil inclination in you that wants to kill your best self. So that's number one. And number two, I appreciate even more. Just like Lashon Hara in our tradition is a really lousy thing. The temple was destroyed because we were lousy towards one another. Just like you poorly speak about somebody else, don't you dare to speak that poorly about yourself. Think of how you're speaking and thinking about who you are. That's a certain degree of the self-esteem to nurture is extremely important. And in the words of Eleanor Roosevelt, who I respect tremendously, America's most famous first lady and a woman who struggled with much of her life with feeling of low self-esteem. Honestly, she writes, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. I'm going to repeat one more time. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. There is not only individual inferiority we fight, we also fight communal inferiority. When Israelites, right, if you remember, in the book of Numbers, when Moses, and upon direction of God, sends the spies to go explore the land and come back to bring us information, because we're going to go and it's going to become a place where Jewish people can find home, called a place of their own. They come back and they say, oh, my goodness, we look like grasshoppers to ourselves, and so we must have looked to them. Not they looked at us as grasshoppers. We saw ourselves as grasshoppers, and therefore they saw ourselves this way. When you walk in a room, think of how you think of yourself. But it is also based on a community level as well. If we don't educate our young, if we do not take care of them right here in the Bima, starting with their baby Torahs, if we don't teach them to chant Haftorah, to write a drash, and to be here for them, and to give them passport into the new world, anti-Semitism will have a heyday, not only on a communal level, but also on their individual. And there are those of us who grew up in a system where without Jewish education and with tremendous anti-Semitism, to find your Jewish self takes years, and sometimes does not happen. Does not happen in one generation. I sit with people who come from countries where they have been erased, Jews have been erased from the face of the society. How much they have to work to be able to bring that fiery self back into life. Here, what we do here on a communal level for you and for others, we are the petri dish of your and trufa and the medicine for your self-esteem. We are the nurturing place for that to take place. It starts with your parents. Most of you had followed the acquisition of Twitter and what happens when you release, and I'm nobody to speak about controlling free speech. Nevertheless, an awful lot of free speech is also tzuras, right? So just to quote for you, right? This is New York Times, okay? So let's stay with me. Slurs against Black Americans showed up on social media service on average 1,282 times a day after the Twitter take. Now it's 3,876 times a day. Slur against gay men, 2,500 times a day, now 3,964 times a day. And anti-Semitic post refers to Jews and Judaism soared more than 61%. You don't want to, if we don't want to educate our young and find also meaning for ourselves in our tradition, let me tell you, well, that is one poison that will work, because you erode a Jewish consciousness and pride from within, and then it's impossible to build on. Maybe synagogue is not your thing. I can't believe it, Rabbi said that. Those of you who are on Zoom, don't faint, and those of you support each other in the sanctuary. Sometimes it isn't. Then the question is, what is? How do you express your Jewish life in your passion? Some of you walk proudly in the streets of Israel, and we come to see you, and we see thriving nation. For some of you, you support communal causes. Some of you read in the privacy of your home. We need to show up for one another, because on Saturday morning, it does matter when we're together. It matters. Harry, I want to remember a moment when I met your family. We weren't here. We did not build this beautiful building. We actually were at Hove Street in a, I don't want to say basement. It was such a beautiful space with so much talent. I came 20 years ago, and this very lovely couple called me and said, we would love to meet you. And I remember how beautiful they were. Harry, they were your parents. And I remember two things. First of all, their talent and brilliance. And two, I remember your mother's shoes. Yeah. They wore sandals, canvas with a wedge. I remember coming home telling Moshe, I want that pair of shoes, but I was too embarrassed to ask, because I will be helping this gorgeous couple. And I said, they were pretty extraordinary. I said, but I tell you what else impressed me. They didn't come alone. You know, in a world where family where we don't live in extended families. We don't live like units, right? We live separate. I saw your parents and your tata fill the room with light. And every time we met, your grandmother was there. She was right there at the beginning of the family, of birth of your family. And she's here now as well, and it's felt by friends, family, all of us. I also want to say that your father's family is also here, and we're there under the chuppah, and throughout your parents creating a Jewish life and Jewish unit. And the members of your father's family here reading gorgeous poetry, clapping. We're like Baptists, I love that. By the way, if you don't know when to clap, what to do with your prayer book, put it on the chair and clap away. Like, what I mean by that is unrestrained joy. If not here, then where? If not now, then when? And if not by you, then by whom? Passionate, complicated, interesting, Jewish people filled with fire for good, for goodness, and their friends in a larger world, which is at times very unkind. But what we're here to do with you is to give you passport of pride, of self-esteem, of courage to know we are your people and we need you and we need all of you. May we find comfort, pride, joy, stimulant, and laughter in each other's presence. To your dear family, your grandparents who are here, your aunts and uncles, to all of you who traveled far and near, and those of you beautiful souls on Zoom who we see clap and wave on the screen. The reason you see me looking at on the screen here, but actually the camera that carries our message is above you, unobtrusively above your heads. We're here for each other and for our tradition. Harry, you're one of us, and it is such a great pride and joy. Mazal tov.